Hi, how's it going? It's been a while since my last sketchbook tour, but I am hoping that this will be the first in a new series. I've managed to fill up quite a few sketchbooks since that last upload. So yeah, here's hoping. It's all dependent on schedules and how busy I get, but the willing's there. So yeah, I'll try and do my best. So this particular sketchbook is my most recent study book. Now, I might feel a bit regretful for making this the first in the new series, because I'll probably be working backwards and everything will be like messed up chronologically, but I'm not really so bothered. Mainly because I'm quite happy with this book. It feels like a turning point from just doing standard studies to doing something a little bit more creative with what I typically do with my general pen and ink studies. So for most sketchbooks, most months, I create prompt lists and tally lists. Basically, do X amount of portraits or, that kind of thing. So for this particular month, it was quite stripped back, and I decided to aim to do 1,000 natural things, 1,000 artificial things, so most things that are man-made, clothing, vehicles, buildings, yada yada yada. Symbols, so that means to me icons, text, numbers, and then geometric shapes and biomorphic forms, which are basically just blobby, natural looking forms, asymmetrical, just not geometric. So that was the list, but my other intention was also to play around with the kinds of things that I do, fill up the pages entirely and, play around with ideas of connecting things that have a similar shape, or trying to find some sort of connection in meaning or juxtaposition. So that was something else. So there's sort of two things running in motion, and then it's trying to find the grey matter, the grey area between those sort of things. So for most sketchbooks over the past 6 or 7 months, I've always started the first page with some straight lines. But because this was a slightly different sketchbook, the approach was slightly different. I was letting ideas come, as it were, instead of just being quite rigid about what something should be. So I did have the inclination to play around with maybe bending some of these while I was doing these first few. I thought, well, maybe if I add some curves and see where that goes. And so that's why this is subtly different from some of these other pages and sketchbooks that we'll hopefully see over the next few weeks. And it's the same thing for this particular page, with the circles, just playing around with those a little bit. So like I waffled on about, I've got 1,000 natural things to draw alongside all the other 1,000 prompts. So I thought I'd do a few big full pages of something to try and get those numbers down. So I think I wound up doing about 150 fingers in here. Some of them are tiny and probably don't really count. But yeah, that was kind of the intention with this particular page. And yeah, then this is more akin to what the rest of the book is like. So it's having a few different elements thrown into the mix. I think I managed to get a little bit of everything out of those 5 prompts in here. The numbers don't really symbolize anything, but I do find that social media tries to push review style content at me, so things for films and games and general media, and they've always got some sort of number, some sort of rating, an opinion. So that's what a lot of these numbers are. It's not necessarily my opinion, but it's the idea of having numbers in art and something that's so subjective become so, you know, kind of objectively thought of in the collective. You know what I mean? Sort of rambling. But yeah, that's kind of that. I just find it funny that we have to throw numbers on things that don't really deserve numbers. But you know, kudos for anyone that does that sort of thing. I still watch that stuff, so I'm not particularly headstrong about, you know, whether it's good or bad. Anyway, so more of the same. Throwing in a few man-made things along with some figure drawings and yada yada yada. This is just some shapes, playing around with different colours as well, something that I don't typically do. I went through a phase of drawing something in black from a reference and then trying to rotate it in red without the reference. So you'll probably see it in some other sketchbooks, not in this one, but there'd be a picture of, you know, like a portrait of myself, and then trying to rotate that, have it make sense. But other than that, this is the first time that I've really gone into using different colour pens. And it's the same for composition, so I don't typically compose my pages. They just come out the way that they come out. But for this one, I thought it might be fun to use frames and panels and experiment with that a little bit. But again, these are all self-portrait type things. Everything in this book that is a figure or a portrait is me. It's been a conscious effort of mine to make these things more personal, and that's just one of the ways that I'm doing that. So got some matches to the side of me from candles and you know, well, just candles. So I was drawing those. It's kind of having things to hand and in the environment, things that might catch my eye. So throwing those into the book. And then this is just a photo that I took out in the woods. And then this is my dearly departed little Bootsy, who passed away last year, roughly this time last year. So he was in my mind an awful lot, and the whole page does feel like, I mean, it wasn't the intention, it's just how it came out. But the idea of extinguishing and going back to nature and all of that sort of thing. So good example of using myself as a reference. It's something I'm not totally comfortable with, so hopefully people won't think that I'm a huge narcissist. And I think, you know, I've got a body that's worth sharing. But like I said, it makes things more personal. It's you know, I'm not that I feel like I objectify the people that I used to draw on things like Croquet Cafe or anything like that, but there is an element of that. You know, I don't claim to own that body or anything like that. I don't know. Again, I'm rambling, but it sort of started to feel a bit strange to me. So I thought this would be a different approach, because I love drawing figure, I love life drawing, I love drawing people. It's something that I typically draw when it comes to no reference sketching, so it's always something that I want to practice and get a little bit better at. And this seems to be the way that I'm doing that at the minute. But yeah, and a bit of binary code. I don't understand binary code, but I understand it's lots of zeros and ones, so I thought I'd throw it in there. Playing around with, you know, digital and analog sort of ideas here, I suppose. Again, not that I had a thought necessarily, but... And again, I've got a few toys kicking around because, again, trying to find my own references and things. So I've got some toy cars, I've got some Lego for doing shape practice and things like that. So this little Lego man is something that I had to hand, and then again juxtaposing it against a real person or myself, and then this is the street where I live, and sort of building blocks and all of that sort of thing. Again, no meaning necessarily. I'm not going in with trying to force a narrative or anything like that. It's having these things sort of reflect back. That's the aim for me. Again, more of the same, having these things around the table, you know, a cloth and some scissors, and playing around again with numbers. This one was, there was a horse that walked past the house, so I managed to get a quick video of it, and then I thought it might be fun to do almost like an animated cell kind of thing, have that movement. And then this is just the view from the back window with some, you know, sort of amorphous, biomorphic things. Some facial features of some of them are made up, some of them are my own, some of them are some friends from Instagram. And this feels like it's more just general practice, but trying to find a different way to have it flow on the page. But there are quite a few just general studies in here, because that, I mean, I suppose there's three things running in parallel: the tally, the playing around with the composition style things, and then there's also just the general study. Like, I do feel like I have to practice for whatever reason. Some torso towers, weird leggy creature. The bee flew in, so I managed to get some photos of that while it was trying to escape the window. And then this is just a local scene, and then the flower was inspired by the bee. So again, it's having ideas and putting them on page as they come. It's not going in and thinking, oh, I need to fill this empty page with something. It's just starting and then having things develop. This is definitely more about connectivity, so the idea of hands being a bit similar to branches, and feet are obviously rooted to the ground, and having that sort of marry with the tree branches. That was the initial idea for that, which is unusual for me because I don't usually have, like I just said about the last page, I don't have ideas going in, but for this I kind of did. I knew that I wanted to do something that married those two things, but how it turned out was just kind of random. Clothes connected by the sleeve. These are just general figure drawings, some unusual force perspective position poses. Some more of the same, really. Clothesline and some shapes, and then I think the next few pages, oh no, so just some more blobs, trying to get a little bit better with rendering. It's not something I typically do. I don't render, I add texture to a lot of what I do, or if I do, it's very subtle, mainly because that's just the way that I like to do it. Again, playing around with form. Self-portraits, although many of them don't really look like me, to be honest, but that's never really the point. It's more about figuring out angles, trying to memorize certain things, refresh my memory on certain things. I did earlier that month, or it might have been late the month before, fall over. I fainted, and I had smacked my head on the kitchen counter on the microwave on the way down. So that's what these little scars are. Oh, and this one's kind of very much the story of that in a sense. So the fractured, feeling a bit fractured, then a fallen tree, and then the hand motif, just because I felt like it needed something else. Again, this is connectivity, so I was thinking in the way that eyes are a little similar to flower bulbs in a sense, just before they unfurl. But also flowers and plants are very visual. So again, it doesn't really mean anything, but it's having those ideas and those connections come to mind and just throwing them on the page as and when they come. So more figure stuff, more portrait stuff. I had struggled a little bit to draw faces because it had been a little while where I hadn't done it. So a lot of these pages are just me hashing out, trying to figure things out. The way I draw isn't very constructive based. I just go for it. I try and look at the angles. I'll make the first line and then try and measure it out in my head. So yeah, it's all about being familiar with something, and not worrying about it being overly accurate. I don't go for accuracy, like I said. I'm trying to memorize certain angles and how things are, how things look. Some ribbons, some more figure drawings with a blanket. Heavy use of, lots of different colours and just filling up the page as much as I can. Now, by this stage, I felt like that I'd done lots of natural things, and going back to that tally, but I hadn't done many symbols and I hadn't done many artificial things, hence why there's lots of random text and clothing and, yada, yada, yada. So, and I think the next few pages are a reaction to that as well. So doing lots of geometric things, some biomorphic things, filling up both pages. The reason I don't typically fill up both pages is all down to scanning things in. So I don't plan on scanning these things in, but, something like that I might have, or I might. And when I draw on the other side of the page, due to the paper being not the thickest, it will come out and it becomes a bit of a pain in the bum. So that's why I don't fill up both pages. But I feel like I fill up the page enough to warrant that. And again, more shapes. And then throwing in some text and a random mouth. So feeling a bit more comfortable drawing faces again at this point, or heads. A few of these look a little bit more like me, I suppose, but again, it is what it is. I had no idea what to put in this square, but I figured a heart would be nice enough, Again, more of the same. The landscape is Buxton. I recently went to Buxton. So that's that. More figure things. There's lots of figures. So I think I mentioned that drawing people is quite a big draw for me. So I really wanted to hit that 1,000 natural things, because for me, natural things, it includes anatomy and it includes figure drawing, as well as some landscape stuff. So I did manage 1,000 natural things, and I managed 1,000 geometric things. Everything else was less, but the target doesn't really matter. It just gives me something to rub up against, as it were. This is again Bootsy. I think this was the day that he actually passed, so I wanted to, do something to remember him, which is really soft and silly, I know. But I've always struggled to draw Bootsy, especially with him being a black and white cat, and I don't really do lots of rendering. But anyone with pets will know that they're all incredibly different and individual. So some of them might look like him, but I don't feel like I get his personality across all that much. But this one's pretty close. So, but yeah, he was a total moron, that cat, but I loved him to death. Yeah, more figures and orbs. The old standing on the Lego thing, and some Francis Bacon-esque mouths. Sorry. I was a huge... It's funny, like, drawing has always been what has inspired me to draw. But, so there's very few artists that, especially, only up until the last few years, there's very few artists that I really admired, but I used to love Francis Bacon, so throwing in sort of a slightly Bacon-esque thing in there. Again, compositionally playing around with having things at different angles and coming in different ways. This is me on the stairs. So, mainly, again, I'm not saying anything with that. It's more, the forced perspective of it and how bodies move and look when they're doing certain things, and it's all things that I try and memorize so I can then replicate it without the reference and have it come out through automatic drawing style things. Just a mixture of text and things. I'm not really, again, saying anything there. Playing around with words a little bit more. I'm dyslexic, so words are kind of my enemy in a way, but I really admire creative writing. So it's something, I used to write songs. I used to enjoy writing lyrics and doing found poetry and things like that, finding different ways to do it because words are so unnatural to me, as you've probably guessed by me rambling on. But yeah, anyway, I do hope to do maybe a little bit more of that. More torso towers. It's definitely something that I enjoyed drawing, but I wanted to have it twist and move around a little bit more. Same with the legs, and again it gets the numbers up for this tally. And then feet now. Torsos, feet and legs are all things that I'm not a huge fan of drawing, so I wanted to throw as many of those into the mix as I could. So apologies for people who hate feet. I'm definitely not a foot person either, to be honest, but they're fun to draw. Admittedly, I quite like drawing feet now, and torsos. But it's all familiar. It's all how familiar you are with something. I get people say, oh, I hate drawing hands, but the way to combat that is to just draw lots of hands. Get a sketchbook, get 3 sketchbooks, fill them with hands, and then you'll stop worrying about hands. They're still tricky. Like I'm really no expert when it comes to hands. When I'm trying to draw them from imagination, I'm always getting, subtle things wrong. I don't really understand the anatomy of hands. But well, there it is. It's just that I'm more familiar with drawing them, so it becomes a bit more enjoyable. Again, playing around with some words, trying to find something in common between buildings and people. It seemed that, thinking of it now, that seems to be quite a common motif in this book. Something I'll think about for the next one. More figure. This is again Buxton. This is one of those dumps where it's lots of whatever it is, just to get those numbers up. So I decided to split that between the geometric, the biomorphic, and the symbols. Eyes, something I always find a bit tricky as well. It's not necessarily the eye itself, but it's the position of the brow and, everything that's going on there. feel like I do understand the anatomy of the face a little bit more than the body, so, you know, I have a tiny bit of understanding through watching medical things on YouTube and all of that sort of thing. But still, I have to refresh my memory quite constantly on those things. I wanted to do more clothing things in this book, and it didn't really happen. But there are a few pages like this, and it's something that is on my mind. I hated drawing clothes, and now I really like it, because a few books before this I focused on it a bit more. And again, I'm more familiar with it now. I know how certain things look and fold, so it makes it a little bit more fun and less lost. And then some more hands, some Lego, like I said. This is a self-portrait with lots of hands. Not really saying anything there, I don't think, other than I like drawing hands, I suppose. Some more figure stuff. So I typically video myself doing lots of poses, which is kind of embarrassing, but it is what it is. So this is me slowing down the things frame by frame, or not quite frame by frame, but when it feels like it's what's the word? It's until it feels like it's enough of a movement to actually draw it again. Shapes, forms and symbols, forms and shapes, lots of limbs. Something I want to focus on next month is having hands holding each other, hands holding things, hands holding feet, feet together, hands on face. You know, have these things interact a little bit more, because when I study them they tend to just be separate. So that's kind of the idea behind that. Just some filler, some filler page. Playing around with text again, just mainly to get those numbers up. But the idea that art is now just content is something that always comes to mind. More figure and face. Again, trying to get these numbers up, but also trying to play around with the composition of it a little bit, like little worms. And the building blocks. And then that's the last page. Get an old school fin. So yeah, that's that book. That's been quite a long video, but I suppose it's been a while since my last one, so that's probably not a problem. So yeah, I'll try and do a few more of these. Hopefully they won't last as long as this, but if you've made it all the way to the end, that's awfully kind of you, having me waffle on for the last half an hour. And yeah, I guess I'll see you around. There's nothing really much to say. I've got nothing to plug. So thanks for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, week, life. See you later. Bye.